this puppy to order. We'll start, I apologize in advance, start with a motion for the board to go into a quick executive session. We'll leave the room because you guys are all here.
Second it.
I can't move. We need
I'll make
to.
a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll be back in a quick minute. Need a motion to exit.
Make a motion to exit the executive.
Someone second? All right. Let's start with Mr. Bernmar.
Hello?
Head right on up here and bring us a picture.
No, those are, that's my other philosophy.
So,
That's why I asked you to come along.
he is fabulous, isn't he? I just feel so good every time I see him on the paperwork. I just know it's gonna be fun.
So it's just a whisker different than the plan that was submitted with the application. And I'll go over that. It's not a big difference. Here's some reduced size copies if you want. Okay. So basically, in a nutshell, David just wants to adjust the boundaries between lot 1B and lot 2. He owns both lots. We're gonna take about an acre point, just shy of an acre point 2 out of lot 2 and join it with his house lot. And lot 2 stays vacant as is, just with a reduction in acreage.
So that
Goes to here. That goes to there. And the difference between this plan and the one that was submitted with the application is the easement for wastewater, where the two blue kind of trapezoids are. We were going to do a wastewater amendment and have lot 2 have its own septic on its own lot. But we ran into a couple little hiccups, so we decided just to leave it alone. They're already permitted, so we decided not to change that at all.
So this house will go through here and go
That's
there.
correct. Yep.
Like that.
Yep. So that's the gist of our, what David and Kathy want to do. There's no other changes other than that. So yeah, that's the old line.
Okay, so it stays with that.
Yep. And the easement area is part of, lot 1B, which is David's house lot, David and Kathy's house lot. And then, yeah,
So just if they are sold or moved, ownership transfers, then it's a deeded issue.
correct. There's an existing wastewater permit for that area. And the paperwork has been sent to the state just for the boundary line adjustment form. That's all we had to send to them, but I haven't got it back yet from them. So there'll be a one-page form that'll be recorded with that, with a determination letter when that's done.
Is anybody here for this project? The boundary line adjustment for Bernmar?
Straightforward.
Looks good.
Make a motion to approve.
My second.
All in favor? That was easy.
Thank you very much.
See ya. David, text me if you want me to work out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep those in the file if you need them.
Okay. And after you get it, you may decide you wanna keep it. He's that kind of a guy. Except if you put your hand out, he might go.
Yeah, well, I have a 3-year-old, so that's a bit of an issue.
Don't get a mile after the next year.
Isaac.
You guys have those copies that I dropped off when I submitted them, or?
I don't have any coffee. Oh, I have like the little,
I dropped off 7 copies of the 11 by 17 in the application, it said,
did you?
in the Dropbox.
I got him.
Okay.
I got him. I got him. How do you say your last name?
Geotron?
G-Watron.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm looking to I recently purchased 30 acres on Swamp Road. I'm looking to a 4-lot subdivision. 3 of the lots you can see are about 3 1/4 acre, and then I'm looking to keep the remainder 20 for myself. I have a few friends and family who are looking to live close by, so I'm hoping to sell this to them. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Is the orange the proposed septic
Hello?
site, or,
Yeah, the orange is the mound systems. It's allowed to see the build sites and the
Oh.
driveways, but
okay.
You are in.
Which district?
the Pond and Swamp District.
I've admitted you to the Zoom meeting, so you are actually in the meeting. If you don't have your video on, you wouldn't be
So
able to
this
see.
is right close
You're
to
here.
36, or 36, like maybe half a mile up the road.
Yeah,
You're
this
You're
end
in
here
the
is
meeting.
36 over this way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And is that pretty steep coming off the road, or is that just that?
It's pretty steep on, I know the map doesn't show very well, but it's pretty steep on the north end coming off.
Right.
Here, you definitely need to bring some fill in to get a driveway in, but as you go farther north, it gets some drops off the road more and then it levels out versus this side is more of a continuous drop, but both sides definitely drop off the road.
So the road is high and it slopes down? Is that how it works, or does it slope up?
Both sides, the whole thing slopes down. On this side, it's kind of less of a drop, and then it goes tapers off versus this side of the property, it drops more off the road and then it kind of levels off.
Is it low and high?
This side of the road up here is higher.
Thanks,
It
Emily.
says high and it's low.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
says
yeah.
750, and then it drops back down to 700.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
That's for everyone. There were 7. Okay. Hold on. Here, you take this one.
Have the wetlands been built, like, delineated? The edges of the wetlands?
In the public?
Yeah, I contacted the
Yeah?
Department of Natural Resources, and this was the map they sent me for the wetlands. You can see the
Thanks.
No
like
crap.
grass, what it looks like on the map.
Yeah.
That's the wetlands. So behind those 3 lots, and then on the north side over in the corner as well.
Got more than one?
That you have.
Anybody else want one? Huh?
So the other side of Swamp Road is not in the swamp district,
I'm not sure about that. I think, boundary along the road.
you're on the lower side.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a swamp.
Yeah, I'm on the lower side.
Oh, on that side.
Yeah, it's not.
This is north. I see. Swamp. The other side.
Yeah, so he's on the lower side.
Usually this is a location that shows you where the site is in the town.
Okay.
It's usually like in the corner here.
Okay.
It's, you know, it's got Route 36,
Yep.
Swamp Road, and it shows you where the site is.
Right.
Location map.
This is this would be the swamp right here.
That rectangle, yeah.
I'm gonna do the whole process, but is this where we guys be going to driveway permits or just permits?
The driveway permit has to be approved by, the fire department and the road foreman. Here, we're just talking about your subdivision.
So this is a draft
Sketch,
sketch.
because it's a major.
Okay, so you'll comply with all these pages 66 and 67.
Okay.
Like things like, you know, meets and bounds, like, you know, all the survey information along the edges of the required site.
Yep.
You know, north, so many degrees, south, you know, west. You know,
Right.
Right now, just a dimension, just a dimension. Page 66 and 67.
Do you have questions, or can I get public questions?
Public questions?
Okay, go ahead. Anyone here to talk about this project?
So I had a question about the soils. I think you're gonna see a lot of people more and more concerned about protecting prime ag soils. And has anybody ever looked at the map on this where the soils are there? I think I remember, and Tori has them, you just confirmed. I remember glancing at it, and there are prime ag soils and statewide soils on exactly the end of this property where the subdivision is. So, according to our zoning regs, that's not okay. If you've got a choice to put it on marginal land, at least fertile soils, that's where the subdivision should be, not on the prime and statewide soils. I can show you where those regs say that, but that, we have the.
Yeah. I don't know if it can be mitigated with the rest.
No, it's me, thank you, over there.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, subdivision, 3 lots are gone here and then 20 acre.
Yeah.
Yep, about every 200 feet, or 200 feet for the.
Three lots right here. Presume this dark is this.
Do you ever know what page that's on?
So that regarding the highway,
Yeah.
78.
The zoning reg that, just for clarity for anybody, the zoning reg that we're referring to is on page 77 at the very bottom, that defines, that defines conservation resources for the entirety of the document. It's gonna be prime and statewide agricultural soils. Bottom of page 77.
I said, if you flip flop, like your lot 4 with the 3 house lots.
Yep.
Would that be a huge issue, or is that, have you looked at?
I've looked into it, but at this point I've done all the test pits and everything like that, so financially I'm just starting out. It would be difficult, probably not feasible right now for me.
Yeah.
I could look into it in the future if need be, but.
I think one of the problems is this is happening because at the zoning, so at the initial meeting between the applicant and the zoning administrator, the steep slopes, the wetlands, and the prime ag should be talked about then and there. And then that way you could have planned around this. It's not really your fault, but that's, you don't know what you don't know.
Right, yeah.
So this is just kind of an aside for public comment, but,
I don't really think it's on the side. I think it's fundamental to why why all of a sudden there's a lot of interest. No, it's just that there's a process to everything that makes it go better for you and them and all of us and everybody. And it feels like we have examples in other zoning boards. For instance, we have a neighbor who has half his land in Swan, half in Fairfield, and our former land was like that. And over there, you go talk to the zoning administrator first, just like you would have with good faith and stuff, and you'd say, here's what I have in mind. And then the zoning administrator, their job is to say, well, actually, this part of your land is primary soil, so you would want to put it over here. Come back with a sketch where the this is here and the this is here.
Right.
Just to meet all the rules, just so that you don't drill test pits somewhere else or put a bunch of gravel in somewhere where a road can't be and all that stuff.
Right.
So you would never make it, ideally, you would never make it to this stage until things were pretty much in order, and then this nice board would just refine things and put their spin on it to make it good for everyone. And so that's kind of a problem here, is that if we keep getting in these situations where we're trying to make somebody's previous investment right, we are always gonna be chasing our tail, and there'll always be people that don't feel like we're following our regs, which we won't be. So there's nothing personal,
No, I
you're a
appreciate
nice guy, I can see that, but that's the way this, by not speaking for everybody anymore, but I know that that's a sense in this group. We want a process that works for you and
Right.
everybody. And so then, I'm sorry about that you've invested in the test pits, but we can't follow our regs if that subdivision part is right there plopped on the very prime ag soils that everything on our town plan and the zoning regs are built to protect.
Right, I understand. Yeah, I apologize. I knew the process and I didn't really know which way to go about it, so I had a few
Yeah.
people walk the land with me ahead of time, and they said that they thought those would be good spots for test bits, and so that's kind of what I went with, but.
Yeah, it's not necessarily an issue with what your research, it's kind of like a process issue, I think, like.
It's a process.
Well, but remember that the sketch plan is can come in on a napkin.
Absolutely, that's what we wish.
There's a lot
We're
of
just-
energy put into this that was not yet necessary.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. The other point that we wanna bring up is that, we were concerned about the concerns on page 32 of our development regs. So like, it seems to me that every zone, or every district in our town, has a thing that its primary goal is. And so, of course, the agricultural district, its purpose is to protect agriculture. The swamp district, its purpose is to protect Fairfield Swamp. So what we're concerned about there is, maybe we need to be extra rigorous or judicious about where the runoff goes from this property. And, all the things that would protect wetlands that everybody's also so concerned about these days. So we wanna make sure that whatever you propose is gonna suit the purpose of that district. The purpose is to protect Fairfield Swamp. So, that's a really good thing to keep in mind too, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I understand some of the regulations I'm not sure if I've met or not, but I mean, my idea with the property, those 3 properties, I've kind of thought, I'm not sure if you've seen the map.
I did, I looked
Okay.
at it, yeah.
My idea was to have the houses near the road, and then you could have kind of a backyard, and the back acre and a half could be kind of maintained as just how it is now, just as kind of a buffer zone from the swamp. So I do plan to maintain those goals with my, my goals of the property are to maintain those. So
Did when you talked to the state about the wetlands, did they have any concerns of your locations?
no, they
Anticipated locations?
delineate these maps right now. They're looking at the wastewater. The locations are good right now. They're just looking at the designs of the mound system right now, see if it's feasible. We should be hearing back from them pretty soon here in the next couple weeks.
So I just have one more question. So other than what you've already invested, is there any other reason why you can't swap it so it just meets our regs right off the bat for protecting prime? I mean, there's no other way to do this. The way the documents read, you have to put subdivisions on the lease for the soil.
She's just a
I'm
concerned
just
citizen.
Yeah,
No, I
She's part of the
understand.
board.
I understand.
She's not.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just asking, can
so
you-
what would be the best spot, do you think, then, for those 3 lots?
I haven't looked at it closely, but just follow the regs. That's all I ever care about. Is that
Okay.
I think if you, the map that I gave Demetrius, it should show the hydric soils, wetlands, and then the,
Yep, yeah,
the prime ag. So I think if you flip flop your lot 4 with those far left lots, of course, I don't know what you're planning to do in the future with lot 4. So that's,
I mean, right now, lot 4, I'm hoping to keep it all for myself, and build kind of in the center of somewhere of the 20 acres and keep the rest. Part of the reason, like I said, part of the reason I'm subdividing it, friends and family are interested, and then the other part is I'm just starting out, and with the cost of building right now, it's kind of hard to just buy a piece of property and be able to build on it. So I'm trying to offset that cost while also keeping friends and family close. If I did switch those 3 lots over there, then I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't reread through the regulation that you're talking about, but that would still leave wetlands and hydric soils in those other 3 lots, especially by the road. There's hydric soils there.
Yeah.
And then that would mean my lot would also have those. So I'm not sure if it's based on per acreage or I'd have to read through it again. But that would still mean that one of the lots would have all of that included in the lot there. So I'll have to look into that more before I can answer your question better. But
Stefan, I have a question since you're here, the expert on this. Is it possible just to drill 1 test bit instead of the state standard of whatever it is, 5 or 6? Just to save money on.
That's only gonna give you a general idea. The
Okay.
requirement is at least 3 for mound sites, depending on the length.
yeah, that's what I did on the map. If you see, if you take a look at it again, there might be an extra copy up here.
Okay.
So initially I went through the whole property and just did one test pit, kind of give a layout of what the property was like.
Gotcha.
Once I delineated those 3 lots, then I went ahead and did the 3 to 4 test pits for each mound system. So I do have test pits done throughout the property, but these ones up here were ones that perked pretty well, and that's kind of why we chose them for the 3 lots versus me just putting my one on that section of there. So
Gotcha.
This is, so 1, 2, 3.
oh shit.
Anybody else have comments on this project?
Can I ask a question? I know there's a fairly steep slope of that land that goes off for the driveway purposes. I know
Yep.
that this is not that point of decision of making that, but I know that's gonna become an issue. So I think that's gonna be an issue with regard to down the road, with regard to the way you have the driveway set up. That's a fairly steep slope off of that. With 2 concerns I saw when I looked at it was the steepness of that, and then the access out of there for people to see on the road coming on that swamp road. You're gonna come out of a very very steep slope. Have you looked into that, or is that a point of, did you address? I know you've already got gravel there for roads, I don't know if that's approved or not, but.
No, the only reason I have, I brought the sand and a load of gravel on top just so I can access the property, so I'm not parking on the road when I'm in there. Part of the reason I chose this side of the property for these 3 lots is that's the least grade off of the road. The northern half of the property is much more of a grade coming directly off the road. So I have those driveways there, and then my proposed driveway and the permits is also on that southern half of the road because it's less of a drop off the road. And the other thing I thought about is kind of these driveways, they come up on a straightaway at the crest of the hill. So you have visibility on both sides, and also you have the driveway come up and kind of level off, maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 feet at the top, have a level spot so you can pull up, stop and see, even if it was icy or whatever, you'd be able to stop by the road and, without having to stop on the slope, so.
Right. I'm just saying, it's a very steep slope there that I'm concerned about.
Do you notice the pitch? Just the grade right here?
I don't off the top of my head.
Is it similar to Route 36 from the swamp up? I mean, it's mimicking that hill, I would assume, similar terrain,
Yeah, there's more, so
steeper.
there's quite a, on the northern side of the property, there's quite a drop off of the road, and then it kind of levels off. That's why if you look at the topographical, it's not much of a slope in that once you get off the road. The other side drops off the road a little bit, and then it's kind of more of a gradual slope back. It's again kind of why I chose those spots. It's less of a grade up to the road.
This is depicting the vegetation. This would be the swamp area. What this is, looks like some pine or hemlock. What is this? Shrubs? Is this hardwood trees?
The northern half is primarily hardwood. If I had to guess, 20 to 25-year-old maple trees. There's a few spots within that are kind of meadow-like, and then the very southern half is a lot of apple trees and a lot of kind of brushy. I think they're called buckthorn. Yeah, no,
That's 10 feet, 756, that's about 10%. That's about 100 feet, that's about 750.
I mean, basically unattended,
So it's about 10%.
in that southern.
Yeah, to me it looks like the southern is pretty unattended. I know the northern side, Michael Esperance here, he's been looking after the property for the last 20, 30 years. And there's trails going through and maple trees have been maintained through there. And he had a couple trails running through the south side too that are maintained, but.
Other question?
Look at that map real quick, because this is the one that I saw when I purchased the property, so there's the purple is hydric soils on this side, so I chose to by the road there, that way I didn't have to go through the hydric soils. So this is the northern side, so that's kind of why, part of the reason I picked this is, otherwise I'd have to go through the hydric soils versus this, I haven't seen this map before on our website or. The green is wetlands, and I believe the purple is the pink circle is hydric soils. That's why I'm a little bit confused by this.
Yeah, I would wanna look at the overlay on the state, that's upside down.
Yeah, that's what I'm a little bit confused about. Yeah, that's the one. So this one, this inner shape here is wetlands, and then this outer shape is the hydric soils. So this is also hydric soils. Part of the reason I chose to do it here, because then I could also bring my driveway maybe eventually in here, so I could see these. Yeah, I haven't seen this map, I'm not sure what I was looking at.
No, because it kind of mirrors.
Yeah,
It's just like a different filter, so.
I think this one here and this one, second.
But if you can pick a different filter, we should have that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I can Brian.
Oh, I see, this line, yeah. What is, sorry. Live knowledge.
Yes.
I would wanna look at that.
Yeah, we need to see that map.
You want to deliberate this later?
Yeah, deliberate.
You have any more questions? We'll deliberate it later.
Okay. So what happens here, Isaac, is they'll discuss it and make a decision, and I'll get in touch with you and let you know what that is.
Yeah, sounds good, and let me know if you guys need any information anymore, and just like that, I can look into it, and send you a copy of the state website.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
I totally will, because I've learned to put it back with you. And
Yeah, I probably about to follow the proper process, so,
Yeah.
I couldn't, wasn't sure where to find
Totally,
that process.
absolutely.
Emily and Paul, please.
That's 10.
Yeah, what was your name?
Linda Ulrich.
Okay.
I'm not sure, your neighbor knows you.
Yeah.
And these are about.
Perfect, yeah, I'll try to get that.
Really, if I have
Excited
to.
there.
No, I know, I appreciate it.
I don't have any easel with me.
Alright, thank you.
There was one here
I
last
have one
time.
downstairs. Hold on, there is one somewhere. Hold
I
on.
think there was one downstairs the other day.
I have one downstairs.
You want me to grab it?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll stick on the end if they're gonna be.
Yeah.
Ready? So this is the continuation of 837 proposed subdivision. I should have said at the beginning, I've been in the capacity of ZA since October, so I'm not a voting member on this or any of the other projects until our new ZA is actually on board, which is happening soon, but it is very exciting. So this is your board for now.
Alright.
Oh, we're good, easy one.
Alright, I will get started. I'm familiar with this. There was no additional information or updates requested from this continuation, so we didn't bring any. It's the exact same plan that you guys have seen. We did, however, kind of want to address the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. Melissa has shared those are probably the main concerns you guys had. And with that, we kind of wanted to start kind of back at the beginning. You know, we're developing in the agricultural district. The development that we're doing, it's a permanent use, it's allowable in the district. We're not filing any density standards. We are following the maximum density that we can in that district. And as you look through the zoning regulations as a whole, while there are instances that mention conservation resources, there is nothing in the regulations that explicitly states that they cannot be developed or built upon. So just kind of wanted to highlight that. We can certainly dig down into those. I'm sure you guys have, and you're very familiar with that. But we just want to address those two areas that were brought up. We can go through them, but also wanted to kind of just let you guys, if there are additional questions that have come up since our last meeting, or additional points, or additional suggestions on what we could do.
I don't have any questions.
I mean, we kind of, again, Luke Willey from Ruggiano Engineering, you know, like, just as Emily said, we presented everything at the last hearing. Again, there isn't any, you know, and isn't any changes to the plan or really any different information than what we presented last time. Again, we're, you know, here for a continuation, so we're really just here to kind of hear from you guys, for, you know, what additional questions you have or additional information that you need from us, you know, so that we can get the hearing closed and hopefully get a decision.
Like I said, I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
I don't have a question.
Is the public
Oh, yes.
opportunity for questions?
Oh, yes.
You wanted to
I
ask.
mean,
I was gonna ask for them.
Yeah, but
to see if they.
Yeah, before we go to the public again, I just, you know, our objective here tonight, you know, from this side of the table, is really to hear from the board. You know, hear from the board what the questions are and what the, you know, what the uncertainties are, what the, you know, if there's any question about why you wouldn't approve this, we'd like to hear from you. You know, we'd like to hear what the issues are that you think, if indeed you do think that this should not be approved, why, so that we can talk about them. And again, this is sketch, so, you know, I think the idea behind sketch is let's bounce ideas, let's see if we can, you know, if there are sticking points, let's see if we can work those out at sketch so that we can get approved to then go forward and address those things in more detail when we come back for final. I think that's generally the idea behind sketch. So again, whatever questions, whatever things that the board is unsure about, fire away, and we'll talk through them.
I personally don't have any questions, and I don't see any problem with it.
Okay.
Well, there is an issue that the board is pondering with respect to two requirements on page 78 of the Conservation Resources chapter,
Sure.
which you're probably fully aware of.
Sure.
And the first is the impact on the prime ag soils, which is, I believe it's the gray in the lower left-hand map, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the gray shape.
Well, yeah, it's essentially all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the second issue that we're still pondering is the alignment of the driveway and the sites with the existing edges and features that are around that rectangular shaped pasture. Right?
Okay.
So, and you guys have probably read this about 300 times
Oh,
as
at least.
well. And so
Yeah.
those are two issues that we're still thinking about. So, and I would say that, well, Aaron, you made it clear, but for me, that's the two biggest issues, which again was brought up by members of the public as well.
Should we address those? Or-
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to
Yeah.
address those in more detail. If that's
Yeah.
if that's a concern of the boards, then yeah, let's talk about it for sure.
So yeah, I've gone through this, we've all gone through it, everyone here has gone through it. So, we're very familiar with that whole section, and that, 8.4C, section 2, I think is probably what we're most specifically talking about. And so this is where, under paragraph B there, it says that the fragmentation of farmland and prime and statewide agricultural soils shall be minimized. And then underneath that, it kind of gives examples and suggestions on what can be done. So, that first one kind of highlights driveways. It says, where sites include linear features, such as tree lines, stone walls, and our fence lines, access roads and driveways and utility corridors should follow such features to minimize the fragmentation of farmland. Is it possible to pull up a Google Maps of this? This is a field.
Well, we're all quite familiar with
Yeah.
the shape of
So
what
there's
part is
no-
open and what part is trees.
Okay.
You can,
Yeah.
you can see it kind of here.
It's right there.
Yeah. So to me, like a linear feature, so the definition of linear is like in a line, would be something like, a stone wall, a fence line, a tree line that's just a line of trees that's pre-existing. You see that all over the place because there probably is a stone wall in there somewhere, and now there's trees there because they weren't able to maintain it. So our site doesn't have anything like that. It has a forest that borders it. But your other regulations, if you look at page, I think it's 7 point. So we listened to that last time, took that into consideration, but then if you go to 7.9, paragraph F, there's energy conservation. And so it says the proposed subdivision shall demonstrate due regard for energy conservation in design. Paragraph 1 says to conserve energy, all subdivisions shall minimize the amount of area for roadways and utilities. So really what we're trying to do by this design is really kind of compact it to minimize the impact, because we do have agricultural soils there. We're not trying to argue that, but we are trying to say, why would we have this long sweeping circumferential road when we can have this small compact road that has the least impact to the soils, runoff, and all those other potential environmental impacts that we have. So, I can see both sides of it, but the standards do also kind of account for trying to minimize and cluster as much as possible the development that you are doing, the impact that you are having, and we are sensitive to that. So that was one of the, I think that's what.
And then what would be the specific concerns in terms of the road or the driveway?
Well, hold on, I just wanna finish one thing. And that section there that I was referencing, 8.4C to the I, this is saying it's not telling you can't fragment the farmlands there, it's telling you that your driveway should follow your features. And if there was a tree line that coming down like diagonally across, like you can see like across the street, there's like a tree line that goes across and there's a road that goes along it. That would make sense. We just don't, it's just an open field. We don't have any tree lines, that we could put a compact road against.
Is there a tree line along the back?
So there's the forest. You can kind of see
Yeah, you see the edge of the tree line here.
It's just
kind of wraps around the back.
In the
But-
western, so to the right of your septic, that property line, is that forested or treed?
Mostly,
Likely, yeah.
yeah.
There's probably some stone wall in there, old remnants of it at least.
And we did look at other ways to do this, other layouts, other, possible, we went through, a bunch of different concepts on, how we could do this. And, specifically looking at, okay, what if we brought the road in up here, along the edge of the wetland, and then, kind of hugging the back line of the woods, and, pulling the houses up more toward the edge, kind of like what those regulations are talking about. And we looked at that, and at the end of the day, what we determined was it doesn't really buy us anything. It doesn't improve. All it does is you end up with a less efficient layout that doesn't minimize the impact of anything.
All
And the
it would
regulation-
do would be, your road would be following the rough
Tree
back.
line,
Right.
And
But-
the regulation
but you're
does
gonna-
include.
but likely impacting more ag soil.
It does include, so it says you should follow tree lines, stone walls, fences, unless doing so would cause such fragmentation. So, again, it kind of goes back to, are we really improving, what's the point here? Are we really doing anything better? It's possible we could do that. We're not saying, if that's the best, application of our zoning regs, we can put a long driveway in.
It's also gonna increase the amount of impervious area, which increases the stormwater runoff. There's a lot of reasons to do it this way. It's a lot of really good reasons to have efficient, compact development.
Yeah.
In the location where we're doing it. And like I said, this is not our first crack at this. We looked at a lot of things, and we looked at, specifically, in response to, comment that we heard from the board and for the public, looked at other possibilities here. And every time we just came back to, like, what you end up with in every other situation is a worse design that doesn't further any of the goals here.
I think I agree with that logic, that, first of all, there's no very linear, straight site features. The back of the site is roughly a curved row of trees, or edge of forest. So following, like, for instance, if it was a straight old stone wall, that would be clear in my mind. Following such site features would be clear. This is less clear because it's less defined as a shape. So I see your logic I understand your logic of, it doesn't make any sense to try to put the road up around the back to follow a feature, because then you're sort of defeating the purpose, because you're likely impacting more of that gray zone of prime ag soil. So, but, we're still struggling, where I am at least, with the term to minimize the fragmentation of farmland. It's not black and white.
Yeah.
It's, you have 1, 2, 3, the better part of 4 sites are on that those proposed sites are on the ag soil.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising that we're struggling with trying to come up with the decision. Is it minimizing it, or is it not minimizing it? That's one of the factors.
Yeah,
That's
and
what we're gonna do
it's
this
kind of, some of those same points that we just made, I think, this design does try to minimize, the consolidated wastewater instead of having 6 different wastewater systems all in those soils. You know, again, the as consolidated access road and short driveways, keeping those houses as close to the road as possible, not putting them
As
up and
far
out,
back in the
having,
lots,
'cause
up
they,
towards
you
the
know.
tree line, just increases the driveway that has to come off of that road now.
Yeah, so we have tried to minimize as much as possible with still doing the allowable development with the allowable density in our zone.
If I can just jump in here, just say one thing, you know, I think there is, I really believe that there is a spirit of the regulations here that I think might be getting missed in the granularity of looking and pulling apart sentences and looking at specific words and things. I think it might be a good exercise to just take a step back for a minute and look at, you know, where does the spirit of this prime ag, you know, minimizing fragmentation, where does that come from? And I 100% agree with you that it's not clear, and there is some subjectivity and some interpretation that the board has to do on that. But I think it seems logical to me that the spirit of that regulation is really about the large tracts of farmland that are all over the town of Fairfield, right? And you know, we have we brought a map of all of the prime ag soils in the town with the roads, and this, you know, this might help to just kind of step back and just look at this in kind of a bigger picture. And again, it seems perfectly reasonable that the drafters of these regulations would be looking at these large tracts of farmland and saying, okay, we want to make sure that if there is development on these large tracts, that people aren't just slapping subdivisions in the middle of farmland and fragmenting, right? The word fragmented is what's being used here. It's, you know, that's the whole regulation is about fragmentation, and I think it's clear that the reason for that is to not break up these large tracts of farmland. That is not what's going on here. You know, we don't have a large tract of farmland here. We have a very small parcel, relatively speaking. We're talking about a 6-acre field here that is not contiguous to any other piece. It's separated by the road, it's separated by wetlands, it's separated by a residential neighbor, it's, you know, separated by steep slopes. This is an extremely isolated little parcel. But it's essentially 6 acres that we are saying, okay, the zoning district allows residential development and allows it at a density where we can take that 6 acres and put 6 lots on it. But that's not going to leave any extra for extra farmland, right? So the idea of fragmentation is really not applicable to us, in our opinion, because we're using the whole parcel. We're using it all up. You know, this is all going to be turned into residential development. You know, now there will be some land as part of those private lots, right? That because of the way that we're doing this and the way that we're clustering the development and we're adding building envelopes that keep things compact to the center so that it does preserve some land around it. But I mean, there shouldn't be any delusions that this is going to be cropland here afterward, you know? Nor does it say anything in the regulations where you can't develop on prime ag, right? It's not what the regulations say. The regulations talk about, okay, if you are going to develop, we want to make sure that you're doing it in the best way possible, so that we're not fragmenting those prime ag soils and those large tracts of current agricultural use.
Uninterrupted.
And that's the way we see it. I think
That's the precedent that's been set by other developments. Reed Road, Rugg Road are two of the large ones that are primarily, if not completely, prime ag. And then, you know, I've gone through the history of all the recent major subdivisions and also just like 2-lot subdivisions. There's not one in the last year that doesn't have some sort of agriculturally significant soil on them.
Well, and I mean, you can look at this map and you can see, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find any lots on a current road that doesn't have prime ag. You know, there's a lot of prime ag soils along the roads in Fairfield.
The prime ag is the dark green, right? On this map, this one.
The prime ag is all of the colors that you see there.
Well, prime ag is dark green.
Well, there's different grades of prime ag. They're all considered prime ag.
Well,
The prime and statewide are all considered prime ag.
I don't agree with that. I know it's not my time to comment, I just want, for clarity,
Yeah,
prime ag is prime ag, statewide soil is another classification.
According to the state of Vermont, if you were to go through an Act 250 process, and you had to go through prime ag soil review and mitigation through the Department of Ag, they consider prime ag soils are what these maps classify prime and statewide. So those are both of those categories are considered prime according to the state of Vermont.
Would you consider reducing your envelopes, on that southeast corner?
The building envelopes?
You kinda got those three, because that's the primest of the soils, they're kind of in the one that's straight up and down, and then the three, or the
Yeah,
three to the left of the septic there.
yeah. This one's pretty tight already, as you can see. Yeah, this one's really tight. And I mean, these two could possibly be moved a little bit if that would help. You know, they're fairly tight already. Yeah. But certainly that's something that we could look at for these two lots for sure, if that would help.
Because per the regs, it restricts any buildings or structures in that, contained to the building envelope.
Right. Yeah, yep.
Well, I accept your reasoning regarding this, your interpretation of what you think might be the spirit of the way these regs are written. Sort of macro view of it, but then we can't ignore the micro view of our particular lot here, that we do have green, right there in the corner. So again, this board is trying to find that.
So I guess, my question to the board would be, what does the board think about that in terms of, I mean, is the board's interpretation of these regs that you can't develop on prime ag soils?
That's not my interpretation.
Okay, because that's really what this is all kind of boiling down to, can you develop on prime ag soils?
I
We
wanna
haven't
point out,
regulated on that basis.
there's nothing on there, and I wanna point out one more thing in that same section, section C. So it kinda lists, the conservation, the definition of conservation resources are prime, statewide, and other farmlands and steep slopes. So it breaks it out, right? Farmlands, and it gives you the regulations that we just went through as far as minimizing. And then it goes into steep slopes, and you can see under steep slopes, 3A, it says no site disturbance or land development shall be allowed on slopes exceeding, which is not the same language that's used above. It does not say. And it goes into steep slopes at 15 to 20%. No roads or driveways shall be located. So it's very, very explicit as to what the regulations state for those different conservation resources. It's definitely a lot more interpretive and not definitive on no development should happen on those things. Only that it should be minimized, which again.
Or all efforts will be made, which I think we've proven that we have.
Yeah, I think for me, it really comes down to that question, that simple question of, does the town of Fairfield regulations allow development on prime ag soils? And I think if that answer is no, then it goes against a clear precedent of every project, that a large percentage of projects that have come before us. And if it's yes, that it is allowed, then, you know, then I don't think there's any reason not to approve or this sketch application. Not saying that there might not be things that there are to talk about and to refine, and pieces where we can kind of negotiate where the board is most comfortable with this project, but you know, there's a very black and white question in my mind that needs to be answered, and the answer to that question determines whether we should go to the next level or not, you know. And again, I think the precedent has been set on that, you know, and I think you know, it's very common in my experience with other towns that, listen, there are stuff in regulations at every town that are a little bit ambiguous, that are gray, and what towns fall back on is precedent. This is how we have decided to interpret this regulation that might not be completely black and white, and we stick with it as a precedent so that we're fair with everybody.
Right.
And I think that's all we're asking for.
That's all we're asking for.
So, a few months back, we had requested a water study be done on the local watershed for the wells, in particular the town well. And we had asked that study be done by an impartial engineer who had no relationship to either you guys or really to the town either. And so we had, Melissa, I believe we had suggested 3 names, or at least one that was
Well, the
willing to take
contract,
on.
the way it was set up was that once it was agreed upon, we were going to contract it. But we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Just
And then you guys
quick
just went ahead
history,
and
that
did
was
it.
so we got a sketch approval for the PUD that we originally proposed.
We did preliminary, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the conditions of the sketch approval for the PUD. And then based on some feedback that we've received, and also trying to make this as applicable to the regulations as possible, we changed the subdivision, so we're kind of back at square one, so.
Right, so this is a new application, and as part of this new application, we submitted our own study done by Hoffer Consulting.
Yeah.
That you should have, and I think our request at the last hearing, which we'll reiterate here tonight, is that we would request that the board review that study and review the conclusions from that licensed hydrogeologist. And I understand that they were hired by us, and you can take that with whatever you want, but an absolutely qualified licensed hydrogeologist and the conclusions that he made in that report, and we would just request that that based on that, that we not go through with the full hydro study on the basis of the conclusions from that report, and the fact that this is, anything related to water is really not town jurisdiction anyway. This is really state jurisdiction, and we will have to go through a permitting process through the state. And if if there was any concern with the state with that regard, they would make us do that. So that's just a formal request that we'll make here tonight. Is to please review that report and make that clear in your decision. How you're gonna proceed on that.
Melissa, are we still gonna request that they use a hydrologist?
That'll be up to you.
That'll go to the board? Okay.
But the state would mandate, of course, if there was a concern on the permit anyway. If that's what we're trying to dictate, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a whole state jurisdiction over this that we will have to go through as
Your geologist or your hydrogeologist did a fairly comprehensive look.
Mm-hmm.
So we would or the discussion that we had previously was that we would have someone independent review that, because
Sure.
we are not qualified to do that.
Okay, sure, gotcha, sure.
I mean, what you did was basically what they were proposing to
Yeah.
do in any case.
Yeah.
We just wanted someone independent to look
To
at it.
review it, not to.
Okay, yeah, no, sorry, I misunderstood that.
No, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was-
So no, if that's what you're talking about, then
Yeah.
that's fine. Absolutely, absolutely.
Shall we go to public comment?
Sure.
All right. How about it, public?
I have a question, if I may. Can I get Debbie on it? I don't know how and I'm not here to make your life worse.
No
okay?
worries.
There's 5 people in this mound system, and the mound systems fail, they're going to fail. And is there gonna be a mechanism in place so that that's gonna get taken care of? Because it's gonna be, if it fails, you're gonna have to go, we don't have septic police, so you're gonna have to go to each of the landowners, and this one needs 5,000, and somebody may have just moved in, and so I don't know how that gets handled. And Fairfield's had a fairly long and sordid history with septic. You can go 100 yards that way, and multiple houses have been sharing a septic system for a while, and it runs down the field 300-400 feet to the brook. And a couple of the houses I know, the one they changed hands recently, they put in their own little box mounds or whatever the word is, but so that they take a long time. We have a ball field, a whole bunch of houses got routed in there, but you can't fix it. When Yates was up there, Jerry was telling me, well, you can't really go to everybody and make them pay. So all I wanna know is if this thing was moving in next to me, and when it fails, how do I know that that's gonna get fixed, or is it gonna leak for 5 years first? Right, that's the thing, so we're setting a precedent, if you're gonna, and the sharing is a good idea, I mean, functionally speaking, and as long as you're gonna get it repaired, maybe it's 5, 10, 20, 30 years, I don't know. Somewhere around the 20-year mark, it may need some maintenance, and who are you gonna call, I guess. And the other thing is, that it's really close to, again, if it was next to me, I'd question how a structure there could come in and have a containment zone that's on me and now restricts me from using some of my property in a certain way. I guess in this case, it's only a well, but I'll leave that. Those are my 2 points, is how does this thing maintain itself? Because once it's done, if there's a problem, how do you do that? Because we haven't been able to fix any of those, except for over time. When banks get involved now, they see a switch and they want septic installed before, they take over these homes. And that's all I have. My concern was that.
Thank you, Mike.
For here and for future,
Yeah.
I'm happy to address that to the board. And I think it's a pretty simple thing. And I agree, sometimes wastewater can get a little bit fuzzy with regards to long-term responsibilities for things with community systems. However, in this case, we are going to need a stormwater permit. And the stormwater permit at the state, they're much more, they're kind of ahead of the curve on other departments with regards to ensuring exactly what you just talked about, with the long-term maintenance of infrastructure in developments like this. And so what the stormwater program has done is they require, when you submit an application, in order to submit an application to the state for a stormwater permit, you have to have an HOA. And that HOA has to be an applicant and a co-permittee on that stormwater permit. And so what that does in our case is it's going to force an HOA to be created and to be maintained, and in order, if nothing else, for the purposes of stormwater. But what it's going to do is it's also going to then pull in all the other components, common infrastructure, road maintenance, wastewater, all that stuff will then be pulled into this HOA, and we can sit here and tell you, yeah, we're going to make sure that gets maintained 20 years down the road. But the better thing to sit here and say is the state of Vermont is going to ensure that HOA stays active via the stormwater program, if nothing else, via the stormwater program, because every year there has to be annual inspections, there has to be operation fees, that are paid as part of that, and the state is very on top of that. So there absolutely will be, there will be measures put in place here to ensure that common infrastructure is maintained for the long term, yes. And a mound system, just for the record, if and when a mound system fails, it's actually pretty simple to repair, because you just wipe it out and start over. And that's the reason why you don't need a replacement system with a mound system, is because everything is built above ground. So if and when there's a failure, the remedy is really simple. You just come in with a machine and you just zip it off at ground level and you rebuild it. So.
Any other comments?
So Melissa, last time we were talking to the board, we had some questions that we had asked, and I know that there was some discussion about going to the regional or to the Franklin County to get those answered. I'm just wondering what.
Which questions are you talking about, Rusty?
We had handed a list of questions that concerns that we had. And you guys met kind of an executive session, and then you came out of that and said that you had to check with the county on some of the questions we had.
And I don't have those. Do you have them?
I can say that those were current, you posted those questions that were asked in the minutes of the meeting. They were requested by people, and they were handed to us in a form to actually have them respond to those questions, specifically in regard to regulations. And it was said at that time we were gonna meet with the Northeast Regional Planning Commission to answer with all those questions. So those are specific questions that were given to the board to resolve, or to inquiries into.
So we had, with the PUD.
No, this is a separate application that was involved with those questions in the new application that were given to you, that are noted in the minutes of the meeting last time. If you pull up the minutes, you actually pull up the minutes of that meeting, you'll see where those questions were asked, the regulations.
Sorry, Zoomers, I gotta just check you out here for a second. I'm blank on that, I apologize, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, this is the
And
concern.
this was the December meeting you're talking
The
about?
last meeting that we met,
December.
December, the last meeting, the first meeting, when the people came and requested those questions be asked, they presented it to you. People asked, people were politely asking if they could be looked at. They're in the minutes of our meeting.
Does any of the board remember that discussion?
We
Oh, yeah.
received a lot of handouts in that meeting. I do
Well, I think
recall
it's
that.
responsibility of the board that we should have followed through with
recall
those
that.
things, as we said we would.
Seemed like it was more like,
But they posted, that Linda Ulrich posted, and Corey Grossman asked you these questions specifically. That you were then gonna meet with the Northeast Regional Planning Commission to resolve and look at those issues.
Actually, that's not accurate. Regional planning was initially contracted to review the PUD, and then when it changed to,
I respectfully disagree with you. We came out of the deliberation and said to this group that was waiting that we would go and do that. It was noted to that.
we do not have a contract
Well, I know
with,
we don't have a contract, but that was what we said we would do.
so we do not have a contract with regional planning.
And why
to
did we say
review.
then we would go to talk to Northeast Regional Planning in order to get these questions resolved?
We all heard that.
We weren't there for that.
What was an example of the one of the questions, Chuck?
They're all posted there.
Sorry.
Those are the regulations.
These are,
This is after the meeting?
We waited for 2 hours, right up here. This was the meeting that was in the basement.
after deliberation.
Is that the
Yeah,
after
Yeah, it was
deliberation?
like 11 o'clock at night.
Jesus.
Those were all requested by us.
I don't know what question.
I don't know what you're trying to say, that you either didn't get them or you didn't answer those questions, and I think the public has a right to those questions that they're asking. Why do we not come back now and have those questions resolved for them?
What questions, Chuck?
I don't know if they were questions or were they statements.
They were questions.
Like, because I don't see any.
Well, they didn't read the paperwork, it's in there as a question.
See attached statement of fact.
I don't know if the minutes are correct, that's my problem now.
I
It's related
can't
to the
say
way
that.
the minutes are written.
I probably have them right here.
Can you scroll down?
Yeah, one more page there.
No, that's the zoning.
No, we received numerous copies of the bylaws. We didn't, I as an individual never received,
11 p.m.
I never received written questions. I received numerous photocopies of the bylaws of different sections. I don't recall receiving
see any
written, I
questions.
don't recall receiving written questions.
I don't see them in the minutes. So,
They're not in the minutes, doesn't mean the minutes are correct.
That's true.
Just because I'm in the minutes, and if you approve these minutes, then the minutes are not correct.
I have some questions here that you gave us. Does the board find that
That's it.
this application includes all existing utilities in this sketch plan, such as wastewater as required by the town reg?
Yeah, it's that.
Yes,
It's
we
that.
found that it did. Does the board find that the applicant must provide a study of the area in accordance with the state wastewater regulation for septic mounds over 1,000 gallons per day? Did we even talk about that one? I don't know if we get to that question.
That's a really important one.
I can, it was answered at the last hearing, I'm happy to answer that one again for you real quick.
Yeah.
Absolutely, as part of the state water and wastewater application that we will have to go through, we will be required to complete a hydrologic study of which
That's what we determined.
most of that work has been done.
It's a state, again,
Yeah.
for the septic system, it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Was that the questions from original P.E.G. or the questions from the last meeting?
No, that's.
Last meeting.
That's,
Yeah. That's all right, let's ask it.
keep on reading, those are these ones.
They're all easy to me. Then.
I'm
Does
just
the
saying.
board find that this plan meets the intent of the land use and zone regs that refers to the purpose of these regulations?
I think a lot of these questions are gonna be answered by our final decision.
I think
That's
that they
probably why
were.
we
It's not like we have to hand out
Yeah. Addressed in the
interim answers as we go.
So that's what the public was told, and come back with those questions resolved, and I think that's all they're asking, that those questions haven't been resolved, so therefore,
So a decision hasn't been made yet.
That's what I'm saying is the decision will resolve the questions one way or the other. They don't need to decide on everything and give you an answer on every individual question. They just need to give you a yes or no on approval.
I just think that we're not feeling heard and validated, that's why we keep showing up. It's because we're not feeling heard and validated because we do ask questions at every meeting and we never get an answer. We don't ever get answers. And we just think that that should be part of the conversational and public process in making our way forward in the future of Fairfield. Is that all these people are here because this is all our futures. And when we ask the board to, we go to a lot of trouble, a lot of painstaking trouble to bring these things forward, we think that should be part of the conversation before you approve things, because you see how much precedent, these folks are relying on the precedent that was set previous decisions. So if you make a decision tonight, then everybody else is gonna come along and say, see, you did it for them, now you have to do it for us. We're worried about that. So we looked at the regulations very carefully and said, does the board feel this? Does the board feel that? So that it would spark some conversation.
I'm just gonna read question number 6. Does the board find that this plan meets the intent of Article 1, Section 1.2 of the Land Use and Zoning Regs that refers to the purpose of these regulations? The town plan says, quote, "It is the purpose of these regulations to encourage the appropriate development of all lands in the community and to particularly implement the goals and policies of the Fairfield Town Plan." Were you expecting a clear delineated response to that question? Because that's kind of an open-ended conceptual question that points at the difference between the town plan and these regulations. And this is what this board is struggling with, is to try to come up with an answer that interprets this as well as we can. And so I don't think we can really answer these kind of conceptual questions as we go along. For example, this number 6. The other ones are more straightforward.
I guess, I don't know, anybody else wanna chime in?
So I guess I'll take and bring up a couple of things that are kind of bothering me. And I brought this up before, and I'm only directing it to you guys, because this is not personal against you two as
Absolutely not,
individuals.
absolutely not.
But, as is stated by Mr. Ruggiano's man, he is telling us left for interpretation. And I agree with him. There's a whole lot of stuff left for interpretation. Having grown up here, having one of the, towns that still has agriculture as its main hub, this will set precedents. You're absolutely right. And as I said before, 25 acres leads to 50, leads to 100. You try to put in as much as you can in that 25 acres. So the decision that the board makes, and this is directed to the board as to the town vision, the very first thing that it says is, vision statement, page 5. Primary and fundamental intent of Fairfield to remain a rural agricultural town. That's the first thing that it says. I did not make these regs, but I agree with that. The second thing it says, bullet number 2, which is again on page 5 of the town plan, support its agricultural economy and look forward to a future where working lands continue to be in production for diverse forms of agriculture. So that's 2 big points right off the bat in the vision statement. It talks about the economy in the plan. Page 26, despite continued decline in the total number of farms remain one of the most, this remains one of the most agricultural communities in the state. Which, again, once it starts, once the door gets open, the problem becomes exactly what was just said, in that, well, we'll take you to the next level to say that you built on agricultural land. And you're right, because there's so much of it that is here, but that doesn't mean we can just throw agriculture, in my opinion, out the window and say, we're just gonna turn this.
I think what Luke meant by going to the next level, like legal action against the town, because you guys you're creating an environment which we're not allowed to develop based on the laws the town's providing.
So what I'm
We're
saying.
not talking about building more houses on that land.
Right, but what I'm saying is.
We're making a lot of assumptions, that's all I'm saying.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, once we start letting you folks do this project, the next group's gonna come
You
in.
can change the regulations after this.
I just wanna point out, no one's letting us do anything.
Right.
We are following
The
the
entitlement is
zoning.
out of control.
We are
guys.
following this, Paul.
But we don't want this to.
No, let me finish, if I may. I don't like.
Excuse me, the word entitled, that's not what we're here, it's just a zoning.
You're not allowing us to do anything.
We're not allowing you to work, you can do what you want.
I wanna get out of the opinions here.
Yes.
I just wanna address, Linda just used the word, and then Rusty just used the
No,
word.
I think Rusty Brannon has the floor. You invited public comment. This is an opportunity for the chair to take control of this meeting. You
That's
invited
all right.
public comment and Rusty Brannon has the floor.
Okay, please continue, Rusty, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Well, I guess, there's other points in this whole town plan, the agricultural district they talk about, and the purpose of it is to provide and protect agriculture, forestry, okay? They talk in the goals, page 65, protect prime agricultural land, support continuation of agriculture. So these are things that a lot of people in town would like to see happen. I'm not saying everybody, and I'm not saying that growth shouldn't happen, it should. It just needs to be controlled growth, not coming in and building projects where we're taking large chunks of land and putting in large numbers of houses. That's my concern. Growth is gonna happen, I absolutely understand that. And if you were coming in and you wanna buy that land, you wanna put a house and sell a lot, I don't think there'd be any problem.
No one can afford to do that here.
What's that?
Nobody can afford to do that here, that's what we're trying to do, just like Isaac before us. We're trying to
No, I-
offset the construction of the cost of our home
It's
by
not
developing.
our responsibility to, but this is a
But
post
your town laws allow for it.
We're getting too far
Yeah.
outside of the regulations, I think. We
This
just,
is a post rationalization, the town shouldn't have to pay for this.
again, we're not asking for that.
Right.
Sorry,
We're
we're
not
not
asking
asking for that.
Enough.
We're not
Enough.
asking you to.
Does anyone else have a comment?
Wait, did Rusty finish?
Rusty, you're not done, go ahead.
So, what I asked the board to do is to look hard at the town plan that we currently have. Do the best we can in terms of whoever developed this plan, to follow it as best as you can, with the idea that, in my opinion, we don't want to lose the ag that we have. We want to encourage it and continue, because you can't compete as farmers, and I'm not a farmer anymore, but I know what it's like, with people coming in and building houses. You're gonna make a lot more money in construction than you are farming. It's just, it is what it is. We struggle to farm, to
Thank
keep
you for
it
your
going.
opinion, Rusty.
And so, this is an agriculture community, And I would encourage you to keep that front and foremost in your mind as you make your decision. And once we start, it's already been stated tonight, that once we start building, this will be probably the biggest project all at one time. I know there's been other projects that have developed over time.
Brian, we just did one 3 months ago for 6 lots.
Right.
3 months ago. Pat Brandon, how many lots does she have there over the last couple of years? It's a major
marginal land.
subdivision.
It's
Exactly.
marginal land.
Well,
It doesn't
but
matter. He's saying size.
I-
All right. He's saying size and number of lots. I'm addressing size and number of
So you
lots.
only want growth if it's on marginal.
And please stop.
So as a board, I would encourage you guys to look at the town plan where we wanna go and how we wanna go there. I will say, I'm a little frustrated, my mailbox is taking a beating. Not sure why, but didn't have any problems before I started to voice my opinion, which is not gonna stop me from voicing my opinion. I'm just saying that,
Mailbox, Rusty?
what's that?
Okay.
Yes, people are.
No.
I mean,
No, I'm not
yes.
saying anything about you
Yes.
personally, or that you were involved with it, I'm just saying that coincidentally, it's irritating.
I'm not saying you did it, but it happened, because we had to wash it off.
I'm sorry that happened.
All right, anybody else?
There's no
have a
one here
comment?
supporting us, so I'm sorry that happened.
Right.
Does anyone else have a comment? Yes.
Question,
That's
so
not your favorite.
regulations that Emily was referring to earlier under 8.4, section 3 says for subdivisions and P.E.G applications only, all building envelopes shall be located at field or pasture edges. We've heard why that doesn't work, I guess. Or not feasible due to topographical or environmental constraints on the least fertile soils on the lot, which appear to be towards the top of the lot. I'm curious as to why the lots weren't placed in those marginal soils.
Because there's topographical and environmental constraints there, because there's wetlands.
There's delineated
At the
wetlands.
top, at the top of
Not
this
at the
property,
top.
at the top of your, where you propose. There's not delineated, that's prime agricultural soils, not
Where?
At the,
And that's where we're proposing the development.
no, the other end.
That's wetlands.
Can someone point to it, please?
You had 2 houses up there to begin with.
The
Right.
far
we
left side of
removed
the
those.
site. She-
On
they're
this
referring to
side.
the
We're not
far left
developing
side.
it there anymore.
Well, why isn't the whole development on the
Because we
marginal
chose not
side?
to.
Well, you can choose.
I'm sorry.
We
It's
chose
not,
not to.
it's not part of the, we removed those lots. It was based on feedback from the community.
Right.
That we wanted less development.
Right, my question is though, that would appear to be the marginal soils.
So there's environmental and topographical constraints there.
There are wetlands right towards the middle.
Middle.
Not at the top, so I'm just curious if that was a consideration and why.
It was, yeah, we considered it, but because of environmental topographical constraints, we decided not to develop up
What
there.
constraints?
Wetlands.
Where are they?
Middle, not the top.
They continue from where they're delineated all the way to the left side of our build site. I think maybe there's probably some other soils up there as well, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but I think it's mostly wetlands throughout that entire area.
The wetlands extend up the hill for sure.
Right.
We've asked that several times, and all we keep getting was that the 300-foot line into the land was enough.
Well, it's not,
You guys actually know where the boundaries of wetlands are?
it's not pertinent to the development that
We're not developing.
But we're saying, why, what you just asked was, how come this whole thing can't be on the least fertile soils, like the regs say?
Because I'm telling you.
Well, let me, I can ask a different way. So Luke, if I can ask Luke, on the far left side where we had those 2 original house
Yep.
subdivisions, was that wetlands?
The wetlands extend up
To,
almost to the top.
well, you're in the middle. Your hand is like in the middle third, 1/3 of the way in.
I mean, there is some uplands at the top of the hill.
Right, that's why we had 2 build sites.
Which is where we had those 2 build sites, previously. And we decided that it made more sense to kind of focus down here.
Just from a construction standpoint, it isolated it, so we're impacting less land, where we have construction sites now in just one location rather than 2. What's that?
It would have been difficult to get those 2 lots squeezed in between the wetlands, the steep slopes, considerations for wastewater, since we can't, they need to have their own wastewater up there. And it became really tight up there for those 2 lots, and just, because of.
I think that's pretty much the answer. Did you?
Does
Did
the
you-
board have a full wetland delineation for the property that they can reference in their decision? Or while, like, making their decision?
Not full, right? We don't have a full.
No.
Can we get that?
Might be helpful.
We didn't complete the delineation.
I know, because you were over on the right side, and what's the point of going to the left side if you're
And,
not gonna
right,
go over it, so-
and we did,
Because you want something that's.
we did some wetlands investigation up here to know, enough to know,
Where we need to stop.
that it was going to be, that it extended quite far up the hill, and it was gonna, be add challenges up here. And so, that's when we kind of refocused everything down here, and we only completed the delineation in terms of, the work by the consultant and, what would be delineated at the state level for the portion that is now relevant to our project.
So can the board ask for that, so that we can get more clarity? Is there 3
And there-
acres up there that are developable? Is there 2? Is there 1? Is there none?
And also, I mean,
I think
the-
Paul
don't
would
want
feel
to
better
know.
about that.
there are mapped wetlands here, right, already. So if you look at the wetland map, there is a pretty large wetland, that's mapped here, and that the delineation, largely, upheld.
You want us to ask them to delineate the part of the lot that they're not developing?
Well, I think
Yes.
if the goal of the zoning regulations is to have development on marginal land, and we have marginal land lots, that in order to follow the zoning regulations and not develop in prime ag, it would make sense to put the lots on the scrub and junk, right? That's the goal. So I would think that it would be, helpful to the board to know exactly where the wetlands are and what other options there are that exist within the project.
I think it's a good point.
Right, because because the balance is between what you guys want and what the regulations say, right? So just because you say you want to do one thing, the regulations say another. So that's the design balance that we have to follow here in the sketch plan, right? Is between balancing the regulations, the spirit of the regulations, which Rusty read, they're right there in the vision statement, right at the top, to preserve agricultural land. So I think two questions that strike me, and you guys said that you asked a lot of questions to yourself, but one question to ask is, is this too many lots to follow the plan of the regulation? Is this too many lots for what the regulations say is appropriate for the land? Like, if we came in and said, I wanna put a McDonald's here, we would say that's inappropriate use of the land. And so I think we can also say, is it an appropriate use of the land to fragment the existing prime ag soils when, as we see it, 'cause it's not delineated, and you guys don't know, that there is marginal land that in our town plan is written out to be where things get developed. That land seems to exist from our perspective, and we don't have anything that's saying it's not on this plan. And so that's what I think what we're asking is, obviously there's the wants of you guys as individuals, and then there's what the zoning regulations say. And it's finding that design balance between the two that's really critical. And I would also say, to the point about linear structures, there's a tree line on that existing property, if I'm not correct, and aren't property lines the existing linear structures? Like, there is a tree line there. So I'm just asking these things because I think there's, as I see it, and in my architectural background, there are linear features on this property, and also that are existing that we're not following, that say we should in the regs. And also, again, we're balancing that, is this too many lots for this particular property issue? Which I don't know what the board can say on that, but I do think that we have to work within the design constraints. Luke, you know it, this is what always happens, you have to work within the design constraints. And the design constraint here is land versus you guys as wants versus what the regulations say.
So going forward, would we be required to ask everybody to delineate all their land?
Like the last gentleman that came through, right, our concern was that he had put his 3 lots on the prime ag soils, right? And we asked, hey, could you take a look at doing it over here, right? Because I think we have to primarily value our prime ag soils, and we have to go in with information. Listen, I know you guys have talked about precedent, but at some point we have to decide when we're gonna follow rules that our town has agreed on. And I think that, again, we're just dealing with all the design constraints here. It's a complex process. You know, it's not just 6 acres of property. It's 6 important acres that, you know, can be preserved in some ways. I know you guys aren't gonna put agriculture on it, but if you put your developments up on the marginal land, then a neighbor, you could sell it off and someone could put, you know, a flower pasture there, or people could put things in there. It's when you divide it, subdivide it up into little discrete pieces, then you have to get an agreement from every single person that it's okay to do something in your backyard. That's what I think the spirit of the regulations are meant to do, is to help us follow these design constraints. And as I see it right now, we're not accessing all of our design options with the current constraints.
Valid thing to bring up.
So, if I can just say just one thing, just with regards to the current layout that we have before us. Again, I'll just kind of go back for the board and just remind the board, you know, what we were here presenting a year ago with the PUD was, you know, at that time we did think we could get. Again, I want to remind you, this is sketch, right? Let's keep that in mind here, right? We're at the sketch level here. You know, and we had thought at that time, yeah, we could probably put 2 lots up here, right? And then we had another 5 down here. And you know, when it became clear that we were going to need to do a more formal delineation on the wetlands, right? We had a wetlands consultant go out there and we looked at the wetlands, and we realized those wetlands actually extend up actually even further than than the state had them mapped. Right, so the wetlands are fairly extensive going up the hill here, and at that time, you know, we said it was still, you know, still kind of questionable as to whether we were going to be able to fit those 2 lots in. But at the same time, with all the turmoil of the project and the various public comment and you know, concerns from the board, we decided, you know what, we're gonna reduce a lot, right? We're gonna bring the overall development down, and we're going to you know, kind of refocus the development in one spot, so it's one curb cut. Everything is, you know, kind of, it's more compact. It's less impact overall, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, at best you could maybe get 2 lots up here, right? So I mean, we're not talking about like, oh, we can just take all this and just move it up here. Like, absolutely not. I mean, there might be opportunity, you know, to do stuff up on the hill, but it's not the case of like, oh, there's a better place to do this, you know. And the other thing that I would say is, you know, there are, the regulations have an allowable density, right, for residential development. This residential development is an allowed use in the district, and it's allowed for a certain density, right, 1 acre zoning. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that there's anything in the regs that has the ability to restrict that density.
Well, Luke,
now there are things, there are design parameters, right, and there are things that we have to do, and the regs ask for consideration of how that gets laid out, and the minimization of fragmented, you know, all that stuff goes into the mix. But at the end of the day, we're allowed a certain density, and in my interpretation of the rules and the regulations, there isn't anything in the regulations that would be able, where the town could say, we're reducing your density because of those factors. Again, that's my interpretation.
Thank you.
I just want to point out too that section 5.1 in the regulations says that if there's a conflict between the regulations, I know this is the point that came up the last time, this is just for us to note, all of us, that if there's a conflict between the regulations in this section and a regulation in another part of this document, the more restrictive regulations shall apply. So that's just something for us to keep in mind, is again, a part of these design constraints that shall apply. And I think a great question to ask is this the appropriate number of lots in conserving everything, right? Like, I totally understand, you guys are a business, this is a community, there's all these things, right? And I just wanna make sure that the constraints that we're considering, one of the design points that we go back to the sort of sketch board on, because this is a sketch, is the idea of maybe putting 2 lots up top and 1 lot over here or behind the existing house. Like, it's not that we're saying don't build anything there. It's just, are there other options that we could consider that follow the design regulation, that follow our regulations? And or better suit towards the regulations, even as like, I don't wanna say active good faith, but as an understanding of this is an ag district and how do we keep the aesthetic of the ag district, how do we keep the value of the ag district? Because people will still drive through this and form opinions about things. That's just how humans work. So that's just something to consider as we consider all the design constraints.
I'm just gonna insert one note here. Because I am acting as ZA, I cannot also act as chair. So one of you needs to be in charge of the meeting.
I hope you fare better than the last zoning administrator. I'm told it's 10 years.
All right, moving adjourned. Are there any other comments?
I have a comment.
Yes.
So I just want us to make sure that we're looking at everything from the top down.
This is a new comment.
Yes, and I don't wanna, I don't wanna have to face this new thing all the time. Public comment is a constantly evolving thing.
I know, but we've heard a lot of public comment. I just don't wanna hear the same public comment over again.
We've only had one meeting on it.
We've only had one meeting on this, and we are all here because we're interested in a fulsome discussion.
Right.
And I really don't think it's appropriate to shut people down.
No, you should proceed with that.
Okay, so here's what we've got. A new point that I'd like to make is that we can look at this from the top down. The state regulations say, this is regulation 4473. It says that this supports this board. This regulation totally supports you in just saying no to this plan and asking them to come back with a sketch that follows. This actually violates 8 places in our zoning regs and 8 in the town plan, and I've got them here for you. But this is what this regulation 4473, it says. No board adjustment or development review board may amend, alter, invalidate, affect, development plan or bylaw of any municipality or implementation or enforcement thereof, or allow a use not permitted by any zoning regulation. So that gives you total cover to just say no to this sketch, because all of us are here we're happy to keep looking at this sketch and find something that fits the zoning regs, fits your business needs, and fits the town plan first. That's another thing. So these are the state regs that you guys can lean on that give the board an authority to make good decisions and rely on the town plan. These are the many places in our town plan. The town plan, if you read those, is the document that supersedes everything. It's not just a charming little document. And here's the 8 places in our town plan that particularly pertain to all development on agricultural lands and the vision of our town. And then the zoning regs are supposed to enforce the town plan. So they're very relevant to the town plan. And here is a document that outlines all the places that this plan violates our town regs. And we just want to make sure too that if you go so far as to approve this, in the finding of facts, you've got to disprove every one of those points. That's what a finding of facts is. You just got to take them one by one and say why you're giving a waiver on those. It's just the way it is. It's the state statutes first, the town plan second, then the development regs to be enforced, and then the finding of facts is what is the document you have to produce at the end that says, in this case, if you approve this, why you were waiving all those many points.
Do you have copies of that for everyone else?
For every person, does anybody understand anything different? We just want the same regs applied for the reasons you guys pointed out, because you're using
You guys have
other.
been talking for 10
No,
straight
I'm asking
minutes.
if you have a copy of that for everyone else.
Yeah.
Oh, I do, yeah.
That's all we
okay.
want.
That's all.
Oh, I have
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, right here.
Oh, perfect.
Take it back.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, so that's it, that's all we're asking, is anybody in this room against development?
No, I think it's just the appropriate development on the marginal lands that we have outlined in our town plan as appropriate for development. And this is not on marginal lands that are appropriate for development.
And so that's all we're saying, is that with this, because you've proven what it's gonna be, if we pass this plan tonight, if we pass the sketch plan, then everybody who comes in here next with 20 acres and 30 and 40, to Rusty's point, is going to use this as the reference point and say, well, you passed that. And so I think if we just get back to just following our regs, just doing what they say, And, because you guys are totally supported in saying, no, come back with a sketch plan that fits our regs. And that just keeps,
I
that
want you
just
to know
keeps
you're
due
equally
process.
supported in approving it.
Yeah,
You're equally supported in
Can
approving it.
I wanna respect, I wanna make a comment, but I wanna make sure you're done.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think, I wanna just get back to like the first question that Luke asked when we started. We wanna make sure that if there's any questions, if we are not meeting the regs, how we can make sure that we can have a dialogue between us to make sure that we are. Because it is not our intention to not meet them, it is our intention to meet them.
If they're present.
And I know I can't make comment on the previous applicant that was just here, but you know, there's things that we've already considered, having a single driveway, where he had 3 driveways, all on prime egg soil. He could easily have put 1 driveway in. He had 3 mound systems. He could have easily moved that mound system, maybe not easily, he could potentially move that mound system to maybe still on prime egg, but just having 1 mound system. So there are things that we have done, we have considered,
We reduce the number of build sites.
we've gone
reduce the number
through
of
these.
houses.
I don't disagree with the point that was just brought up about evaluating the upper lot. We have done that, we have not proven it. If that's something that we need to do, happy to do that.
If the board wants to do that.
Again, we want to comply, so I wanna have that conversation.
With the board's
Not,
direction.
I mean, we'll go through this,
Not
thank
the
you.
angry mob.
But again, we wanna make sure that if there is areas that you guys as a board have identified, that we're able to have a discussion and work through it with you guys.
With the board.
And again,
And understand that the board is the townspeople that are representing the town of Fairfield and what the town of Fairfield is. So don't, I mean, I know you're pushing hard, that the board, you don't wanna hear from us, I get it.
No.
We're back.
We need to work with them, not you, Rusty.
I
We've
just
heard from you.
think that for that comment, because it is a valid point,
Yeah.
that does.
They have to decide, not you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I understand the representative of the town, but they have to make the decision,
Right.
not you guys.
Right.
Well, we
all know that.
We're aware.
Shut that down.
Doesn't seem like it.
I would agree with that comment the other way.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I had a lot more comments, but a lot of you, I think nerves are wearing a little thin here, but I just wanted to say that, as an accountant, boring accountant, I also think about the financial impact, to the town on this, and as Linda stated, as Rusty stated, we feel like there's kind of about 16 violations of the town plan, the zoning regs, and as Linda stated, as you have to do the finding of fact and explain, if you go forward with this and if you approve it, why, that we are gonna diverge from those regulations, that's gonna be a very expensive legal battle, I believe, and it's gonna end up costing thousands of dollars to try to defend something that we feel, as the current design is set, is kind of indefensible based on the regulations in the town plan. Therefore, again, I agree, I'm not against development, I just would like to see it follow the regulations and financially from the town perspective, we've got a budget that's already stretched pretty thin. We're gonna have to spend a lot of legal money trying to defend something that is hard to defend. It would be a lot more prudent to just try to follow the regulations and not end up, spending that money kind of wastefully.
Do you want to comment on that?
Thank you.
I understand.
Let's wrap up the public comments.
Well, I just have one question, because I am confused. In previous meetings, to include the last meeting, the depiction, the recommendation during public comments was that the development follow the linear features, which has come up again today, correct? In consideration of the ag soils. And I believe Tory Crossman had even indicated something similar, come up the boundary and across and have your development there.
Couldn't you say there's also a linear,
Well, I think they're referring to the boundary.
yeah, but there's also a linear delineation, there's a tree line on the existing property.
I'm just trying to
Right, I was just trying to point to.
communicate what was
Yeah.
requested
Right,
last time.
like there's options over here and then here, right, like.
I'm
but that leaves this
not
whole
disputing
field
that, I'm
open.
trying to communicate
Yeah.
what was recommended last time.
Yeah.
That the drive come up this way and the development either along this line or this line occur.
Well, can I
But
answer
I'm
that?
trying to
I know, I'm so sorry.
communicate, I have a question.
Okay, I'm
starting to lose my point.
I'm sorry.
But if you look at the subset of the prime soils, that would ensure that all of the development is in the prime soils. There's also been public comment previously that said if they would just build along the lines, then nobody would even be here. So I just would like for someone to confirm that no one would have any issue, or confirm to the applicant that no one would have any issue if development went there.
You mean lot sites, Demetrius? Do you mean lot sites when you pointed like this?
Well, I think that's how I interpret it.
Or are you saying the road?
That the building would, right, well, the road's gonna have to follow the
I think the
lot
road,
sites.
we're referencing the
So
driveway.
that's where I have
The
like
driveway where you're
It's a
starting,
contradiction, in other words.
but the houses follow the lines on the bottom of the page and on the side toward you. Right, your septic's already on the bottom.
I mean, I'm happy to speak to that.
No,
No,
I'm trying
asking
to
about-
clarify how I'm interpreting the public
Can
concern.
you bring that, because I can't see really where you're, can you just move it over? It's just really hard.
So I believe Tori had made the suggestion, I'm sorry. So that, you know, basically follow these, I guess what would be borders for the development, vice going up the heart of the property. But the primus of the soils is right here. So I don't know if the concern is soils, aesthetics, a combination, because I don't want to make assumptions, you know, as we adjudicate the issues. I'm trying to get to the heart of the public's concern.
I think it's a combination of both, right? Like, if we're saying, I think now that we understand, I don't wanna speak for Tori, I wasn't, not his mouthpiece. I think he has lots of forks running around. But like, I think there's options here that follow linear things, right? There's this option of preserving all of this and putting an appropriate amount of lots over here and an appropriate amount of lots over here, right? Like, I think it's a combination of aesthetic and it's a combination of following the regulations, right? Like, I think that this is sort of the aesthetic and also prime land as I understand it, right? And so if we were to put driveways over here and then put things kind of tucked behind the existing house, those are options, especially when you consider also there's potentially lots up here, right? Like, I'm not trying to speak for the public on this, it's just my design brain when I look at this says, the constraints say, what if we didn't have this? What can we do with this, right? So that's the design constraint that I look at in trying to be constructive in this conversation is, what if we turned it upside down?
Right, that's
and
not
looked
what
at
the
new
public
things?
had said previously.
Yeah, I mean.
Or at least not how I had interpreted it.
Right, I mean, I haven't spoken at public
That's just
meetings
what I'm
before
trying to-
and.
That is a new concept.
But,
What I'm trying
but there's
to
concepts there
digest.
to look at the appropriate number of, what is the appropriate number and what are we leaving open and what are we closing off and, yeah, I guess partly it is an aesthetic question, but on the other hand, it is also a land use question and there's options.
So I'm happy to
Right,
speak
which
to the board
is a
on
thought,
that.
right? Like maybe
Yeah,
that's
just
it, is it's not all in
Work
one.
through it.
Right, but I think it's us knowing and feeling comfortable with that, those ideas have been thought through and that, again, the sketching hasn't changed, but I would love to like take a dry erase marker to it, every part of my design body wants to, just to move around and play with the lots.
So as I spoke to at the beginning of this hearing tonight, we have been through a lot of that, right? And Emily knows, I mean, we did a bunch of different concepts on this, and we are continuing to do concepts. And after the last hearing, when that comment came up about like exactly that comment you just spoke about, that if we were just coming up and following, and I believe the intent was not to come up this side, but to come up this side. Yeah, and so we specifically looked at that. We actually did a full concept workup of, okay, what would that look like if we were to do that? And it gets complicated, right? Because driveway comes into play here with widths and, a certain number of houses, right? You gotta have a 24-foot road if it's serving a certain number of houses. And so there's a lot of different factors that go into that, right? And so we looked at all that, and we looked at, okay, what would that look like? And again, as we spoke to before, what we came up with in the end was, again, it's way more, it's increasing the impervious area, right? Which is not efficient, it's expensive, it increases stormwater runoff, it's not efficient. And specifically goes against the regulations, right? The regulations say that you want things minimized, and that's just a general like design, best management practice is to like keep things compact, if possible. And so, again, and what we came up with, it didn't, we still have shared wastewater system, we still have individual, still have potable water issues, we have, roads and drives and stormwater, and we have all this stuff that again has to get baked into that, has to enter into that equation. And at the end of the day, what this does in our conclusion, as the designers here, our conclusion was it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't help us, and it doesn't further any interests of the town. It does not, we don't end up with anything more than what we have right now. And just speaking to the density issue again, as I stated previously, we're allowed a certain density by the regulations. I don't believe that there is anything in the regulations that would allow for, or that would require a reduction in density based on these kinds of design parameters.
You've gone through that.
Yeah. So
we understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Melissa, is there somebody on Zoom that's trying to ask questions or?
Where do you see that? Oh, thank you. Tori says, I think I am muted, but nothing I said is contracting. There are options to mitigate. Makes the most sense to build on marginal land. If that's not possible, move to the edges. Oh, contradicting. Nothing I said is contradicting. There are options to mitigate.
Sorry, Tori.
Makes the most sense to build on marginal land, and if that's not possible, move to edges.
I did kind of want to get an answer to Demetrius' question though, about if we moved everything to the boundary, would the public be okay with it?
Well, so I was hoping that someone would speak up to
I
that,
will
because
speak to
there
that.
have been comments in the past to that, but I would like to hear it from the public specifically.
I don't think we have to comment on it, but what I think that I would appreciate a design that took the two lots, that brought the two lots back at the top, and as Liesl suggested, use some kind of a drive that came into the west side of the house, and put a couple through there. Like, why aren't we sitting here, why do we have to have 6 houses? If the land is appropriate, and we can get it to fit the zoning regs, with 4 houses, plus you've got the old house to sell, you got 5 marketable things there. The zoning regs are kept happy. The next person won't use this as a precedent for why they can put 10 houses on 30 acres. It'll just expand, just like, because you're using precedent, same with the next guy. So we would love to find some reasonable place here where the public feels good about, like Liesl's mentioned, we haven't even mentioned the aesthetics, but having that big open meadow there matters to people. And it sends a signal to future development too. So what if there was a plan that had the 2 houses back at the top and 2, like Liesl just pointed out, back there behind the old house, and that meadow stayed a meadow forever, and that's great. That might fit all the design regs, and nobody could use this as some precedent.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, not developing it at all would fit all the design regs. That's not what we're here for.
No, I'm not asking that, I'm just saying,
No, I'm just
why
saying.
are we set on 6 houses in the middle of
That's what the
in the
regulations
middle of No.
Well, I think that's why we're here, right? I think we
Yeah,
the two
but
of
what
us
we're
are
saying
getting
is-
disagree.
This is what we're saying, is we're at the sketch plan stage. It's supposed to be like drawing on a napkin, I totally agree with Melissa. And if you guys can just say, hey, what we see there doesn't match at all with these regs, come back next time, we'll all be a good spirit. And if you came back with a sketch that had 2 houses on the top and 2 up behind the old house, I don't know, would anybody have any problem with that? Does that, and because we know that would get much closer to fitting the regs?
It would certainly allow for the septic not to encroach on my land.
Yeah, because that was one question I was gonna finish with. This septic is not the size that it's gonna end up. The designer pointed that out last time. It's gotta have the old house on it and this new extra house. And I'm wondering if the zoning board wants to keep okaying plans, that exclusion zone could get so big that it actually falls over their house. I would love to see what the exclusion zone, where it's actually gonna fall, if you actually had the septic system as big as it's going to be. Because that would be a tragedy to devalue their property like that. Exclusion zone right over the top of your house. I'm sure there's not a person in this room that would want that.
All right, Linda, thank you. We've been through that last point,
Yeah.
the specifics of that, so
Yeah, thank
thank you. Are there any other comments? No, we've heard from everybody?
Is there anything in the chat just to make sure we close?
I got it, thank you.
Chat's good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So the board will deliberate on this. We're not gonna make a decision right now.
So can we ask whether the hearing will be closed tonight? Not that a decision will be made tonight, but that the hearing will be closed, that the public, that the sketch plan will be closed. The hearing itself will be closed and a decision will be made. Is that,
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd like to offer that you don't need to. I found a zoning regulation that says that you don't, that if you're still pending, where would the big exclusion zone fall if it was actually drawn as big as it will be? Or you're wanting to say, hey, bring us back a sketch. Yes, we'd like to look at what it would look like with the 2 lots and the 2 lots. What it says here on page 11 is, we used to kind of be operating that we had some kind of sense of urgency, but there is a reg that says on page 11, recess or continuing a hearing on any application or appeal pending submission of additional information, provided that the next recess hearing, date, time, and place are announced. So there is no regulation that says this has to be done in so many days. This one covers you for just extending this till we've got to the public, as you guys have got all the information that we need.
So I think the issue at hand is this hearing gonna continue for that particular proposed sketch? So I think to answer your question is, I think we will plan to close the hearing on that submitted sketch. And then, depending on our answer, if we do request a revised sketch, that'll go to the next step. That'll go to a revised sketch. So I think the board is, not right now tonight, but after deliberation, come up with an opinion of either approving or denying.
yeah, and you know, I mean, certainly if there are things that the board would like us to further consider as part of the sketch approval and the notes that come with that. Yeah,
we'll make that clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time, guys.